Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to start by having a look at the latest from the live radar as we are seeing Storm Henk clear out to the North Sea through this evening. We'll look at the latest weather warnings as we have seen an amber warning issued today for the winds from Storm Henk. Really ramped up overnight last night. We knew it was going to be stormy and very rainy today, but we didn't expect it to be this severe. So we'll have a look at that from the latest on the live radar and of course from the UKV. And then we'll concentrate more on the medium to longer range, as yes, it's stormy and pretty mild at the moment, but it is going to be turning a lot colder later this week, and the longer range today could potentially be throwing some severe cold our way as we head towards the middle of the month. The GFS has produced the coldest run of the winter so far, and potentially one of the coldest runs we've seen in the past few years. It shows that high pressure building in this weekend, easterly winds pushing in, and then that high pressure moves towards Greenland through next week and then unleashes north to northeasterly winds. Not only just a blast of northeasterly winds, but sustained northeasterly winds, bringing in extremely cold air masses and lots of low pressure, which would mean that not only would it be very cold, but it would be incredibly snowy as well. Almost a perfect storm scenario if you're looking forward to some snow. It is unlikely it's to play out exactly like that, but it just shows you the evolution that is possible in the medium to longer range. The GM follows suit by producing another Greenland high. It doesn't quite get out to the extent of the GFS in terms of pulling in those northeasterly winds, simply because it gets cut off at day 10, but it pretty much sets up a very similar pattern. And then of course we'll have a look at the ECMWF, which I haven't actually had a look at yet, as it is only updating as I'm recording this video. And we'll have a look at the latest from the ensembles to see what the spread is, because it is, yes, looking likely to be very cold, but how cold will it be and how much confidence do the models have at this stage? So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see this big hook, which is Storm Henk, that is clearing out to our east. As I said, it was only named this morning as the overnight runs really ramped it up. We're thinking 40, 50 miles per hour was possible yesterday, which is well warranted for a yellow warning. Maybe 10 miles an hour we could see it named, and that's what happened overnight. Actually, it got even more severe than that, got up to 70 or 80 miles per hour through this afternoon. It was locally very stormy. Widely it was very unsettled, but locally the strongest winds were really in this hook of Storm Henk. And now those winds are starting to ease and clear out into the North Sea. But it's from sort of South Wales, South West England, through London, to the north of London, into the Midlands. That's where we've seen the most severe winds. Again, luckily only lasting a couple of hours. But locally I've seen some images and videos from Twitter and on social media of some really quite significant damage from trees or even scaffolding and temporary structures being taken down. Now, further northwards, yes, hasn't been seeing the strongest winds, but it has rained all day. Rainfall accumulations getting up into the tens of millimetres now, and there could be even the risk of localised flooding overnight tonight. Luckily, though, over the next few days, it is drying up. Of course, turning a lot colder, but drying up most importantly. So it will allow these areas that have got completely saturated over the past couple of weeks to finally dry up a little bit. Now, further southwards at the moment, it is actually drying up with that rainfall clearing, but you can see it's mild in the south, cooler in the north, but generally most are in and around the average mark. If we do put on the latest wind speeds, you can see where the strongest winds are across this eastern portion as that hook does clear, but for most the winds are still gusty but starting to ease. And if we do look at the past 24-hour precipitation, you can see the immense amount of rain that has fallen. Of course, the centre of the low moved through further southwards, and we have seen very heavy rain here, but the concentration of the heaviest stuff has been to the north of the system through Wales and northern England, where we've seen, as I said, widely a few tens of millimetres, 30, 40, 50 millimetres. Now, if you look at the latest from the weather warnings, you can see we've got this amber warning issued. Again, we don't really have a look at this because it actually expires very shortly. Again, it was only put into force earlier this morning, and it said for gusts of 70 to 80 miles per hour across the coast, inland 50 to 60 miles an hour, quite widely, perhaps 60 to 70 miles per hour. And of course, we had the widespread yellow wind and rain warning issued as well. Now, you can see this yellow rain warning does expire at 9 p.m. this evening as well. Again, expecting that rainfall to continue for another few hours, especially for those northern areas. But over the next few days, we've got no warnings issued. But come this weekend, we could start to see some warnings issued, perhaps for snow and ice as we do progress into next week. Initially, we're going to see that easterly wind move in, as we'll see from the UKV, but there is uncertainty how much winteriness we will see with that. And then the longer term, of course, it is potentially turning a lot colder, and more importantly, the more sort of significant thing is there could be quite a bit of snow if that pattern that we saw in the GFS and the GM does come to fruition. Now, if you look at the latest UKV, you can see all that rain starting to clear through this evening, and it will be drier overnight. However, there still will be showers, especially along the east and northeast of Scotland and elsewhere, just a smattering of showers coming in from the west. They could be heavy and thundery at times, but at this stage, we're not expecting anything too crazy. Some more persistent rain and a bit of snow over the Scottish Highlands, but most areas it will be drier today, but still lots of showers around. As we head into Thursday, there is the risk of some more persistent rain in the southeast. It was pretty severe yesterday, but as you can see, it has trended further southwards, so hopefully shouldn't give to anything too much, but could just about clip the far southeast. Into Friday, still a few showers around, but look, the showers are starting to diminish, and you can see that's because high pressure is building in. Into the weekend, it's starting to turn a lot colder. Those showers are subsiding as we see high pressure build in and very cold air starts to come in from the east. You can see the wind direction changing through Saturday into Sunday, and then we're starting to see a straight easterly. At this stage, the air mass is cooling down significantly, potentially even the -10 isotherm could come in further southwards, and there is the risk as we head into Monday and Tuesday of some snow for a time for the east, as we do see potentially some convection coming in from the North Sea, but we're still just about too far away to have that on the latest UKV. But you can see if we look at the air masses, mild at the moment, average really, but then you see that cold air to our northeast is just lingering, slowly nudging in by the latter part of this week, and come into Friday and Saturday, the floodgates open and that cold air starts moving in, and you can see especially for southern and east areas, it really moves in by Sunday, and you can see the coldest air actually is towards the London area. As I said, the high pressure is centred further northwards, which means the winds will be stronger further southwards and eastwards, allowing that cold air to get drawn further in, essentially meaning the south and east has the highest chance of wintry showers and the higher chance of being even colder in terms of air masses. Further northwards, yes, the air masses are not quite as cold, still pretty cold, and of course, closer towards the centre of the high, very light winds. Clear skies at night, we could see some pretty severe frost. But of course, the UKV is only getting into the first day or two of this cooler, colder spell. So we'll have a look at the temperatures now. They're only going to get lower than what the UKV is showing. Overnight tonight, temperatures will not drop away too much with milder air moving in, but still cooler across Scotland. Through Wednesday afternoon, average to above average, widely sort of 7 to 10 degrees. And then as we slowly head into Thursday, again, cooling down, temperatures only 5 to 9 degrees, and by Friday slightly cooler overnight. Could even see a frost for parts of the Midlands, northern England, as we do see clearer skies. And Friday afternoon only sort of 4 to 7 degrees widely. Saturday cools down even further, bit of frost potentially again, but maybe a bit too much cloud around, and you see Saturday afternoon maybe only 3 to 6 degrees, maybe locally 7 or 8 further westwards, and further northwards and eastwards could only be 2, 3, 4 degrees. But then look what happens as we head into Sunday when the proper cold air starts to arrive. Overnight temperatures widely down towards freezing, even when we've got a cloud around, just showing that air mass is turning a lot colder. And by the afternoon of Sunday, temperatures not rising much above 2, 3 or 4 degrees. Now, you may think that's not that cold, but remember, this is the first day the cold air is moving in. The ground is still pretty mild. The surface conditions are generally in a very mild setup at the moment after a really mild December. So it is going to take a couple of days for it to turn really cold, but you can see even by Sunday, we've only had that very cold air mass around for about 24 hours, and already temperatures are struggling to get much above the low single digits. And as you'll be able to see now on the latest GFS, the cold weather coming this weekend into next week could just be an appetizer. It could be a starter for the main event, perhaps the main course, as we head towards the middle of the month. Now again, I must say these are only individual operational runs. We cannot take them too literally, but there is relatively strong support for this sort of pattern in the longer range. It's the details and severity of cold, the longevity of cold, which we still need to determine. But you can see westerly winds coming in at the moment, but it is all changing. High pressure is building to our north, an easterly wind is arriving by Sunday, and you can see perhaps into Monday that wind becomes pretty brisk further south and eastwards. Some runs have it slightly more unsettled, others don't, so there is still a little bit of discrepancy there. It's going to be cold, it's just how many wintry showers are we going to see? Again, the best thing to do probably is just wait to see the short range runs like the UKV, and we'll be able to see that in the next day or two. But could be some wintry showers in the south and east. If not, it is going to be cold, going to be frosty, and it's going to be a fairly wintry feel. But as I said, this is just the starter. Those easterly winds come in, but eventually the high pressure is going to topple. Not topple too much, but topple slightly, which cuts off that easterly wind and essentially will allow a slightly milder upper air temperatures to move in. And you can see this by next Wednesday, slightly milder upper air temperatures sort of swirl around the higher pressure system, but because it's a cold high pressure system, the surface temperatures are cold underneath it, and we have had very cold air move in initially with this system. It will mean that at the surface we don't see temperatures rise at all. It will stay low single digits with overnight frosts. But it's what happens in the subsequent days. As we head towards the day 10 period, the high pressure retrogresses, moves towards Greenland, and look at the cold air flooding out of the Arctic straight into Scandinavia and towards the UK. We even see a polar low developing there, and that could allow widespread snow to fall if that system moves in. You can see it moves down our east coast, and you see it is the perfect storm for colder, snowy weather. Northeasterly winds coming straight in from Svalbard, follow those isobars back, coming straight from the North Pole. Very low heights to our north and our east, and it will just be screaming. Snow showers coming in from the north and the east, disturbances giving widespread snow, and yeah, could be really quite severe with this. And the thing is, it's not just a blast. It is lasting numerous days and looks to last even into the longer term, right towards the end of the extended range. And then look out to our west. Atlantic systems trying to move in, and you can see where this boundary sets up between the milder and the colder air, we would expect to be seeing even further heavy snow. But at this stage, 384 hours, locked in, bitterly cold air mass moving in. And of course, it's not going to be as cold as an easterly, as the beast from the east, for example, because if you look at where the air is coming from, it's taking a fairly long sea track, essentially, meaning the temperatures do climb up slightly. So it's not going to be as severe. If this came off, it wouldn't be as severe as the beast from the east in terms of severity of cold, but perhaps actually in absolute terms it could be, simply because we are seeing this in January, whereas the beast from the east was in March or end of February. So air masses will be very cold, but won't be as severe as if this came in straight in from the east because of the sea track. But regardless, it would be potentially extremely snowy. If we do have a look at the surface temperatures here, this is at midday on the 18th of January, temperatures hardly above freezing. Many northern areas, -3, -4, overnight temperatures widely below freezing. You can see the temperatures not got much above freezing at all in many of these days. Dew points, well, look at that, widely below freezing, meaning any precipitation falling out of the sky would be falling as snow. And we look at the total snow depths. Again, don't take these too literally because, again, it will all depend on where disturbance is set up, but you can see the risk of widespread snow here in the longer term from that day 10 period onwards. So it is looking extremely interesting. As I said, one of the most severe GFS runs we've seen in a number of years, definitely the most severe GFS run we've seen this year so far, or this winter so far, because remember we only had 2 days of this year technically. And yeah, definitely is highlighting the risk of severe cold as we head towards the middle of the month. Now, of course, one GFS run could always be called anomalous, but we need to see support. Now, the GEM does its best at providing support out towards day 10. You see the westerly winds coming in over the coming days, the high pressure builds to our north and our west and pulls in an easterly wind, even stronger easterly wind than the majority of other runs there by Monday into Tuesday. And that could definitely give maybe a day or so of the risk of snow showers as that comes in. A proper colder blast there, but as I said, could just be the starter. The high pressure does start to topple a bit, and you see that milder air mass move back in. Temperatures at the surface, though, I must emphasise, won't be all too mild. Look, still mid to low single digits, and that is because we are seeing generally pretty fresh conditions at the surface, inversion taking place under the higher pressure. But if we move on another couple of frames, high pressure does exactly what it did on the GFS, moves towards Greenland, and the floodgates of that northerly wind start to open up even more direct northerly here from the GM. And look at that air mass. It is ridiculously cold. Minus 20 degrees at 850 HPA. Again, that is very unlikely to reach our shores, but it shows you the depth of cold to our north and our east. That is ridiculous air mass moving in, and again would accompany severe cold and the risk of widespread snow, as this is a big lobe of lower pressure as well. So yes, the GM unfortunately only goes out to day 10, so we can't see what happens beyond that, but it looks as severe, if not even more severe, than the GFS at day 10 with its synoptics. Just doesn't quite have the extended range to see it actually come to fruition. But just look at that, straight northerly, directly from the North Pole. Now, if you have a look at the ECMWF, I actually have no clue what this will show in the final sort of couple of days of the run, which is where we've got most interest for severity of cold. But over the next couple of days, it's very similar to the other runs. High pressure building to our north, easterly wind moving in. Not quite as strong as an easterly wind as the GM, more into line with the GFS. The high pressure does topple, and then it moves to our north and our east, and to our north and our west, and it does start to set up a colder pattern. Not quite as severe as the other runs. As you can see, the northerly isn't quite as direct. It's a bit more of a wavy pattern because the high pressure isn't as far northwards as the other runs, but it is broadly pretty similar. The synoptic pattern is very similar. Just the exact orientation of the high pressure, low pressure means that cold air would take a little bit longer to move in, and it wouldn't be as severe. So instead, the ECMWF would likely set up a cold spell, definitely would have the risk of winteriness, but potentially maybe slightly more marginal further southwards and westwards, definitely. But regardless, would still be pretty cold indeed. You can still see that from the temperature deviation. Lots of cold air moving in from our north. You can see, even though it is orange and reds to our north, that would be very cold for the UK. This is, of course, relative to location. The darker reds and yellows, oranges across Greenland and North Atlantic symbolise high pressure building northwards with warm air adventure pumping that warm air further northwards, building high pressure and allowing northerly winds to move in. So yes, ECMWF not quite as severe as the other two runs, but nevertheless shows a relatively similar pattern towards that day 10 period. Of course, though, not only do we need other operational support, we need ensemble support. Now, if we look at the latest GFS, you can see this turning much colder this weekend. We could see a good 3 or 4 days of that proper cold air in, and then it goes milder for a few days. But as I said, remember, that's the high pressure toppling, likely to still see an inversion underneath it. But then we see potentially the next wave of very cold conditions. Temperatures start to slump, yes, being longer range, there is more uncertainty, but the majority return us to that -5 region. And you see the operational run there with its very severe cold. Of course, the operating temperature is only going down to maybe -8, -9, maybe -10. Not quite the ridiculous cold as you'd expect from an easterly wind. But as I said, it's because of that long sea track. You can see precipitation increases, indicating that lower pressure is coming in, which would give rise to more winteriness. So you can see the first wave of cold air arriving this weekend and the start of next week. Briefly milder, especially at the upper air level, but at the surface probably wouldn't be all too mild at all. And then we could see another plunge of very cold conditions. But of course, that longer range has more of a prospect of being even colder and even more wintry. But there is, of course, uncertainty with it. But definitely has been a trend in the last 24 hours towards a higher risk of severe cold as we progress in towards the middle of the month. Humidity temperatures are freezing over the course of the next couple of weeks. You can see the downward trend over the next few days. Pretty much every day is going to be a degree or two cooler than the day prior. And by the time you get to this weekend, Sunday time, 2 or 3 degrees. And it doesn't look likely to rise all too much for the foreseeable future. Perhaps Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week when the high pressure topples, could see a 4 or 5, maybe a 6 degree down the east coast if we start to draw in a bit more of that milder air. But for most, it's going to remain cold and it's going to remain very frosty. The big thing is, especially if we're looking at snowfall, is the dew points. Dew points have to be below freezing to see snow. And you see from pretty much Saturday, Sunday time, the dew points are at freezing, if not below freezing. The only time they maybe just jump above freezing is when that high pressure topples, and we're unlikely to see any precipitation with that at all. So it does mean that regardless of the exact pattern, majority of ensemble members do have the air mass cold enough for snow. Again, small little details that will get resolved by shorter range runs will make the difference between snow, sleet, maybe rain. But at this stage, the overall synoptics do look very positive if you are looking forward to something wintry. Now, of course, if we look at the latest ECMWF, we can only have a look at the midnight run, unfortunately, but it is relatively similar. It's actually, almost bang on the same as the latest GFS. Colder plunge this weekend, down towards sort of -6, -7, or maybe even slightly colder on some runs. Climb up as we head towards the latter part of next week, around sort of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday time. Quite high confidence, and then we could see another big plunge. And there are some very cold and even colder pattern potentially appearing there. So it's going to look incredibly interesting over the course of the next couple of weeks. We are on the cusp of a cold spell. It is looking highly likely now of a very cold next couple of weeks. Or let's just say a cold next couple of weeks with the risk of very cold weather within this cold spell. At the moment, we're not looking at anything too major in terms of wintriness, in terms of snowfall, but I'm talking the next week. The longer range, though, of course, holds completely different prospects. There is the risk, as I said, if we see that more sort of unsettled synoptic pattern develop with low pressure to our east and our north coming in from Scandinavia and from the Arctic, then it could get incredibly wintry indeed. It is still all to play for, but this is some of the best sort of colder pattern we've seen from the models this winter so far, definitely. Even better than the spell we saw in November, and even more confidence. And, of course, better than we've seen in the last couple of years. Of course, we have seen quite cold spells, especially last winter, but nothing too wintry. If we did see that pattern come off in the longer term, definitely could be one to remember if we do see that come off. Of course, I'll keep you updated over the next couple of days to see what the models do, but at the moment they are trending colder, they are trending snowier in the longer range, and we've today produced some of the coldest runs we've seen in the last couple of years, and definitely the coldest run we've seen this winter so far. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to keep up to date with what is going on with the latest runs. Of course, we'll have videos out pretty much daily, or definitely daily over the course of the next few days, the next few weeks, having a look at this, as this is going to have extreme interest as this colder pattern does ramp up towards the end of this week. So as I said, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.